"Be still," the Duke of Rookhaven said softly, into the dark of his own carriage, to the woman who had no business being in it. "Be still. I will protect you. But you must be still." Gabriel Thorne had not intended, when he climbed into his travelling carriage that black November night, to find a stranger crouched in the well of it beneath a fallen rug. He had intended only to go home. He had spent 3 intolerable days at the house of Sir Marcus Kern, a hard, grasping, ambitious man whose hospitality Gabriel had accepted purely to conclude a matter of property between them, and whose company he had endured with the grim patience of a man who has learned that most social obligations are simply debts to be paid down. He disliked Kern. He disliked Kern's cold, ostentatious house and Kern's cold, ostentatious wife and, most of all, Kern's simpering guests, who had spent 3 evenings attempting to marry their daughters to the feared Duke of Rookhaven and failing, as everyone always failed. Against the wall of ice he had spent a decade building. He had wanted only to be gone. He had risen before the household, in the raw blue dark before dawn, and gone down to his waiting carriage, and got in, and rapped the roof for his coachman to drive on. And a voice from the darkness at his feet had said, low and desperate and shaking, "Please, oh please, if you have any mercy at all, do not put me out." Gabriel had gone very still. He was not a man who startled. He had been a soldier in his youth, before the title fell to him. He had learned to meet the unexpected with a cold, clear head, and he met this the same way. He did not shout. He did not throw back the rug. He looked down into the swaying dark of the carriage. They were already moving. The wheels loud on the gravel of Kern's drive, and he made out, by the faint grey light beginning at the window, the shape of a young woman folded into the well between the seats, her arms wrapped about her knees, her face a pale blur turned up to him, and terror coming off her like cold off ice. "You are in my carriage," he said. It was not an accusation, it was merely a fact offered so that they might both begin from the same ground. Yes, the word was barely a breath. I know it. I know I have no right. I saw the crest and I thought a great man's carriage would not be searched, that no one would dare. I am sorry, I am so sorry, I had nowhere else. Her voice was climbing toward panic. "Please do not turn back, I beg you. If you turn back it will be over. Whatever you think of me, whatever it costs you, please do not turn this carriage back." Gabriel considered her. He was, by universal report, the last man in England to whom a woman in trouble should have entrusted herself. The Duke of Rookhaven was cold. The Duke of Rookhaven was hard. The Duke of Rookhaven had a reputation, carefully unrefuted because it kept the fortune hunters at bay, of caring for nothing living but his horses and his lands. Children were warned of him. Mothers whispered. He had done nothing in 10 years to correct the impression, because the impression served him, and because the thing that had made him cold, a betrayal, long ago, that he'd not speak of and did not forgive, had left him with very little wish to be known. But he had also been a soldier, and a soldier learns to tell true fear from false, and the fear in this carriage was as true as any he had ever seen on any field. "Who," he said, "are you running from?" The pale blur of her face turned away, and then back, as though she weighed the cost of the truth and found she had nothing left to lose. "Sir Marcus Kern," she said. "He is my guardian. My name is Rosalind Care. My father died 2 years ago and left me to Sir Marcus's care, and my fortune with me, £30,000, which Sir Marcus has had the managing of, and the spending of, these 2 years." A bitter breath. "There is not, I think, a great deal of it left. And so my guardian has arranged that I shall marry, this very week, a man of his choosing, a Mr. Alderton, who is 60 years old and cruel and owed money by Sir Marcus, and who has agreed to forgive the debt and pay a sum besides for a young wife with what remains of a fortune. They signed it between them like a bill of goods. I am to be married on Thursday whether I will or no. Sir Marcus told me that if I refused he would have me declared mad and shut away, and that no one would take the word of a hysterical girl against a man of his standing, and he is right, no one would. Her voice broke at last, so I ran, before dawn. I heard your carriage was to leave early, and I got into it in the dark, because a duke's carriage would not be stopped, and I thought. I did not think, I only ran. And now I am at your mercy, your grace, and I know what they say of your mercy, and I have nowhere in the world to go. The carriage rolled on through the grying dark. Gabriel Thorne sat very still and looked at the shape of the terrified girl at his feet, and something moved in him that he had thought long dead, some old buried thing from before the ice, from the boy he had been before he learned what people were. He knew Marcus Kern. He knew him for exactly the man she described, cold, grasping, ambitious, entirely without scruple where money was concerned. He had spent 3 days watching Kern and disliking him more with each hour, and he did not for one moment doubt a word this shaking girl had said, 'cause it fit Kern like a glove fits a hand, a ward with a fortune, a guardian who had spent it, a forced marriage to a creditor to bury the evidence. Yes, he believed her utterly, and he understood too, with cold clarity, exactly what he was being asked to do, and what it would cost. To shelter this girl was to make an enemy of Sir Marcus Kern, and Kern was not a man who forgave. It was to invite scandal, a young woman, unchaperoned, fleeing in the carriage of a bachelor duke of black reputation. It was to entangle himself, who had spent a decade untangling himself from every human claim, in the desperate affairs of a stranger who had crawled uninvited into his coach. He weighed it in the manner of a man who weighed everything. And then he leaned forward, and he took up the fallen rug, and very gently, so as not to frighten her further, he settled it back over the girl's shoulders against the cold, and he said the words he had begun with, low and steady and final, "Be still. I will protect you. But you must be still, and you must do exactly as I say, or I cannot. Kern will have men on the roads within the hour, once he finds you gone. If they stop this carriage, and they may, you will stay beneath that rug and make no sound, and I will deal with them. No one searches the Duke of Rookhaven's carriage. No one will dare." His voice hardened, not at her, but at the thought of Kern. "You have not crawled into the coach of a merciful man, Miss Carew. Whatever they told you of me is true. I am cold and I am hard, and I have no love left in me for very much at all. But I have a particular and abiding hatred of men who sell women like cattle, and I have disliked your guardian for 3 days with a thoroughness I did not know I still possessed. You will be safe, I give you my word, and my word, whatever else is said of me, has never once been broken." For a moment the girl beneath the rug did not move. And then Gabriel heard a sound he had not heard directed at himself in more years than he could count, a small, broken, disbelieving sound of relief, the sound of a hunted creature that has run to the end of its strength and found, against all hope, a hand held open instead of a snare. "Thank you," Rosalind Carew whispered from the dark at his feet. "Oh, thank you." And the carriage of the feared Duke of Rookhaven rolled on north through the greying dawn, carrying its master and the stranger he had promised to protect, toward the great black house on the moor where no one had been welcome in a very long time. They stopped them, as Gabriel had known they would, at the crossroads below Harrowden, where the north road forked and a man might set a watch that caught everything passing. 3 riders, Kern's men mud to the knees, hard-faced, reined across the road and hailed the carriage. And Gabriel felt the girl beneath the rug go rigid as stone, and he set the toe of his boot lightly against the rug, a silent pressure that said, "Still, still. I am here." Then he let down the glass and looked out into the grey morning with an expression of such glacial and total displeasure that the foremost rider actually pulled his horse back a pace. "You have stopped my carriage," said the Duke of Rookhaven. "It was not a question." The words fell like stones into a well. The rider swallowed. "Your Grace, beg pardon, your Grace, we're Sir Marcus Kern's men, and there's a young lady run off from his house in the night, his own ward, out of her wits with a brain fever, and we're bid stop every carriage on the road, and that is, we're to search," said Gabriel. He let the single word hang. He let the man hear everything in it, the affront, the incredulity, the vast cold weight of a great name insulted. He had spent 10 years perfecting exactly this, the art of making other men feel the ground go soft beneath them, and he had never in his life put it to better use. "You propose," he went on very quietly, "to search the carriage of the Duke of Rookhaven on the public road for a runaway girl. On the word of Sir Marcus Kern, do I understand you?" He did not raise his voice. He never had to. "Then let me be certain you understand me. I have spent 3 days under Sir Marcus Kern's roof, and I have formed a very complete opinion of Sir Marcus Kern, which I would be glad to share with him, with my solicitors, and with the magistrates of this county, should any man of his lay so much as a finger upon the door of this carriage." There is no one in this coach but myself. If you doubt a duke's word on the public highway, you had best be very sure of your master's power to protect you afterward, 'cause I promise you it will not be equal to mine." He let the glass drop another inch. "Now, do you search the Duke of Rookhaven's carriage and answer to me for it? Or do you stand aside and let me pass, and tell Sir Marcus Kern that you met me on the road, and that I sent him my compliments, and that I said he would do well to look very carefully to his own affairs before he troubles himself further with mine?" There was a long, cold silence filled only by the blowing of the horses. Then the rider's nerve broke, as Gabriel had known it would. No man in 3 counties would risk the enmity of Rookhaven for the sake of Marcus Kern. He wheeled his horse aside, ashen, stammering apologies, and the 2 others with him, and Gabriel raised the glass and rapped once upon the roof, and the carriage rolled forward through the gap in the riders and on up the north road, unsearched, unstopped, the girl beneath the rug breathing again at last. They did not speak for a long while. When at last the crossroads was far behind them, Gabriel bent and drew back the rug, and Rosalind Carew came up out of the well of the carriage and onto the seat opposite him, and in the full grey light of morning he saw her properly for the first time. She was younger than her fear had made her sound, perhaps 22, with a pale, fine-boned face and a great quantity of dark hair fallen half out of its pins, and eyes of a warm brown that had wept and now were dry, and a mouth that was trying very hard to be steady and not quite managing it. She was dressed plainly for flight, in a travelling gown of grey stuff, and she had come away with nothing, no bandbox, no maid, no money, only herself and her terror, and the desperate gamble of a stranger's carriage. And she was looking at Gabriel Thorne, Duke of Rookhaven, as though he were a thing she could not account for, as though a wolf had lifted her out of a trap and set her gently on her feet, and she did not yet dare believe it would not eat her after all. "You lied to them," she said. Her voice was uncertain. "For me, to Sir Marcus's men, you put your own name and your own credit between me and you might have simply given me up. It would have cost you nothing. It would have saved you everything. It would have cost me a great deal," said Gabriel. "It would have cost me the only thing I have kept clean these 10 years, which is my own good opinion of myself, and that Miss Carew I do not sell to men like Marcus Kern." He looked out the window at the moor going by, brown and vast under the low sky, so that he need not look at the disbelieving gratitude in her face, which he did not know how to bear. "You will come to Rookhaven. It is 3 hours yet. My aunt keeps house for me there, Lady Sefton, my mother's sister, a formidable and respectable old woman who will lend you her countenance and thereby stop the worst of the gossip. You will be her guest. You will be chaperoned and fed, and given a room with a lock on the door that only you hold the key to. And you will be safe from Kern and from Alderton and from anyone else, for as long as it takes me to settle this matter, which I intend to settle, Miss Carew, thoroughly and permanently, so that no man ever has the disposing of you or your fortune again." Rosalind Carew stared at him. "Why?" she said. It was the same question everyone eventually asked him in one form or another, but she asked it not the way the fortune hunters asked it, angling for a compliment, but the way a person asks a thing they truly cannot understand. "You do not know me. I am nothing to you, a stranger who crawled into your carriage and made you an enemy of a dangerous man. You will gain nothing by any of this but trouble. Why would the Duke of Rookhaven, who they say cares for nothing living, put himself to so much trouble for me?" Gabriel was quiet for a moment. He thought of the thing he never spoke of, the reason for the ice. He had loved a woman once, when he was young and warm and whole, before the title, and she had been in exactly this kind of trap, a father's debts, a forced match to a cruel old man. And she had come to Gabriel and begged him to help her, to take her away, and Gabriel, young, poor, a soldier with nothing, sure there would be time, sure her father would relent, had told her to be patient, to wait that he would find the means. And she had married the old man because she had no choice and Gabriel had not moved fast enough, and she had died within the year, and Gabriel had carried it every day of the 10 years since. The knowledge that he had had one chance to save the person he loved from exactly this, and had been too slow, too careful, too sure of time, and had lost her forever. He did not tell Rosalind Carew any of that. But it was why, when a shaking girl in the same trap had crawled into his carriage in the dark and begged him not to turn back, The Duke of Rookhaven had not for one instant hesitated. "Because I was once too slow," he said at last, and it was more than he had told anyone in 10 years. "For someone in a trap very like your own, and I have spent a long time wishing I had not been. You crawled into the right carriage, Miss Carew, though you could not have known it. Of all the men in England, I am perhaps the one least able to turn away from what you asked, so do not thank me overmuch. You are, in a manner of speaking, paying a debt I have owed for 10 years to someone I could not save. Let me pay it, and be still as I told you. You are under my protection now. Nothing will touch you." And Rosalind Carew, who had run to the end of her strength and found not a snare but a shelter, looked at the hard, cold, feared man across from her, at the grief he had let her glimpse, just for a moment behind the ice, and said nothing at all, because there was nothing to say, and she turned her face to the window and let the tears come at last, quietly. The tears of a creature that has finally stopped running. Gabriel let her weep, and did not intrude upon it, and watched the moor roll by, and felt, for the first time in 10 years, that some frozen thing in the middle of his chest had begun, very slightly, to ache. Which is what happens when the blood comes back into a limb long numb, and is the beginning, though he did not yet know it, of feeling anything at all again. Rookhaven rose out of the moor at last in the failing light of that first afternoon, a great black-stoned house on a fold of high ground, older than the county's memory, with narrow, mullioned windows and a squat battlemented tower, and an air, even at a distance, of a place that had shut its doors against the world a long time ago, and had not troubled to open them since. Rosalind, gazing up at it from the carriage window, drew in her breath. "It is not a welcoming house," Gabriel said, watching her face. He had learned already to watch her face. It hid nothing, and after 10 years among people who hid everything, he found the openness of it a thing he could not look away from. "It has not had a mistress in 3 generations, nor a guest in longer than I care to count, nor any lofter that I know of in the whole of my time in it. I tell you so that you are not disappointed. It is safe, Miss Carew. It is not warm." "It looks," said Rosalind slowly, "like a house that is only waiting to be warm. That is a different thing." And she said it so simply, so without any wish to flatter, that Gabriel found he had no answer at all, and looked away, and felt the strange ache stir again beneath the ice. Lady Sefton received them in the great hall, a tall, upright, iron-grey old woman with a face like a closed book and eyes that missed nothing, and heard the whole of the tale from her nephew in a few dry sentences, and turned her formidable regard upon the pale, exhausted girl standing in her borrowed cloak in the middle of the vast cold room. Rosalind, to her credit, did not shrink from it. She lifted her chin and met the old woman's inspection with a weary, unbowed dignity, and after a long moment Lady Sefton gave a single approving nod, as though a question had been asked and satisfactorily answered. "You will do," she pronounced. "You have been very ill-used, child, and you have not collapsed under it, which is more than can be said for most young women of my acquaintance, who collapse under nothing worse than a spoilt bonnet." She turned to Gabriel. "She will have the blue rooms, and my own maid to attend her, and she will not stir from this house nor show her face at any window until you have settled that dreadful Kernman, which I have no doubt you will do with your usual thoroughness." And Gabriel, her sharp old eyes softened by some fraction that only her nephew would have marked. "You have done a right thing today. It has been some while. It suits you. Do not let that face of yours tell the poor girl otherwise." Gabriel made no answer to that, but he did not forget it. The days at Rookhaven that followed had a quality he had not known in that house in his whole life. He had expected to keep to his own wing, to see the girl at dinner and no more, to conduct the business of her rescue at a proper cool remove. He found himself, instead, seeking her out. He would come in from the moor, chilled and silent, meaning to go straight to his study, and would hear, from the small parlour Lady Sefton had opened for her, the sound of Rosalind reading aloud to his aunt, or arguing some fine point of a novel, or once singing, low to herself, a little country air, badly and sweetly, and Gabriel would stop in the cold corridor and stand and listen and not go on to his study after all. She was mending. He watched it happen, and it moved him more than he would have believed. The hunted look went out of her by degrees. The colour came back. She began to laugh, and then to laugh often, and the sound of it in that grim house was so strange and so welcome that the very servants smiled to hear it, and she began in the evenings to talk to Gabriel, carefully at first, freely of her father, whom she had loved, of books, of the moor she'd begun to walk out upon with a fierce delight, of anything and everything, and Gabriel, who had not truly talked to a living soul in 10 years, found the words coming back to him rusty and slow, and then less slow, and then not slow at all. "You are not what they said, Your Grace," she told him one evening over the chessboard, studying the pieces rather than his face, in the way she had when she meant to say "sing true" in the county. "When my father was alive, they spoke of you, the feared Duke of Rookhaven, cold as the grave, hard as his own moor. I was frightened half to death of you when I climbed into your carriage. I thought I had escaped one trap only to fall into a worse one." She moved a bishop. "And instead I found this. A man who covers a stranger with a rug before he asks her name, who lies to a dangerous man's face to shield a girl who is nothing to him, who talks to his aunt's guest of an evening as though her opinion of a book were the most important matter in England." She looked up then, and caught his eyes, and would not let them go. "Why do you let them think you cold, when you are not?" Gabriel looked at the board a long time before he answered. "Because a cold man is left alone," he said at last, and it was more honest than he had meant to be. "And a man who is left alone cannot be—" He stopped, and could not finish it, and moved a knight instead, and said, more lightly, "You will lose your queen if you go on staring at me instead of the board, Miss Carew." "I am willing to lose my queen," said Rosalind Carew, still watching his face and not the board at all, to learn what a man who is left alone cannot be. But he did not tell her that night. He only took a queen gently, and turned the talk aside, and lay awake long after in his cold room, turning over the unfinished end of his own sentence. Cannot be hurt, cannot be loved, cannot lose again what he was too slow to save, and understanding, with a slow dread and a slower, stranger hope, that the ice he had trusted for 10 years to keep him safe had, without his leave, begun to go. Rookhaven took Rosalind Carew in, and love grew there the way things grow on a moor, slowly, against the wind, hardier than anything raised in gentler ground. Gabriel had thought, when he installed her under his aunt's wing, that he would see little of her, that he would settle the business of Kern from a distance, through solicitors and quiet threats, and the girl would remain a guest at the far end of his great cold house, an obligation honourably met. He had not reckoned on how a house feels when there is, at last, someone in it who wants to live, for Rosalind, once the terror had drained out of her, proved to be nobody's notion of a swooning victim. Within a week of her rescue she had recovered enough spirit to argue with his aunt about the merits of a novel, to laugh a real laugh, low and warm and surprised out of her, at some dry observation he had let fall at dinner, and to walk out over the winter moor in a borrowed cloak with a colour in her cheeks gowned himself watching for. She was clever and brave, and had a way of looking straight at him, unafraid, that no one in 10 years had dared. The servants, who feared him, adored her within a fortnight. His formidable aunt, who approved of nothing, pronounced her a sensible girl with unusually good sense for one so illy used, which from Lady Sefton was very nearly a canonization, and Gabriel Thorne, who had built a life in which no one wanted anything of him but his money and no one gave him anything but fear, that there was now a person under his roof who wanted, of all impossible things, his company, who saved up thoughts to tell him, who looked up when he entered a room, whose face changed, warmed, opened when she saw him come. He took to coming home earlier, he took to lingering after dinner, he took, without at all meaning to arranging his cold-ordered days around the moments he might see her, and to noticing the way the firelight lay in her dark hair, and the way she bit her lip when she was thinking, and the way her warm brown eyes lifted to his across a room and held, a half-second longer each time, until the holding of them became a thing he waited for through whole days, and he did not touch her. She was his ward's age, his guest, a woman who had come to him in terror and trusted him with her safety, and Gabriel Thorne would sooner have cut off his own hand than presume upon that trust by so much as a look she had not invited. He told himself it was nothing. He told himself the warmth he felt was only the natural pleasure of a good deed, the thawing of a long solitude, the pale winter sun of ordinary human company falling at last upon a man too long in the dark. He told himself this right up until the evening Kern came. For Sir Marcus Kern did not give up a fortune of £30,000 without a fight, having learned, for these things cannot be hidden, that his runaway ward was sheltered at Rookhaven. He came north himself, with Mr. Alderton the aged bridegroom in tow, and a lawyer besides. And he presented himself at the great black house one raw evening and demanded, as her lawful guardian, the immediate return of his ward. Gabriel received them in the great hall alone, standing before the cold fireplace as though he had been carved from the same stone. He let Kern bluster. He let the lawyer cite the guardianship, the settlements, the law that gave a guardian the disposing of his ward's hand until her majority. He let Alderton, a dreadful, dry, avaricious old man, leer about his bride and his rights. He let them talk themselves entirely out. And then, when the silence had gone on long enough to grow teeth, the Duke of Rookhaven spoke. "You have finished," he said. "Then attend to me, for I shall say this once. I have spent the fortnight since Miss Carew came under my roof making certain inquiries, Sir Marcus, through certain gentlemen in London who are very good at their work. I have the accounts of the Carew estate. I have the record of what was left to you to manage, and the record of what remains, which is to say, a little under a third of it, the rest having gone, by a most creative arrangement of paper, into the pockets of Sir Marcus Kern. He watched the blood leave Kern's face. I have the correspondence between yourself and Mr. Alderton, in which the terms of this marriage are set out with a frankness that will read very badly indeed before a bench of magistrates, a debt forgiven, a sum paid, a young woman delivered up. All so that a guardian who has robbed his ward may bury the theft inside a marriage where the husband, having got the fortune, would have every reason to keep her quiet. His voice did not rise. It grew, if anything, quieter and more terrible. You have not come here to reclaim a ward, Sir Marcus. You have come to complete a crime, and you have made the singular error of choosing to complete it under the roof and against the guest of the Duke of Rookhaven. The lawyer had gone grey. Alderton was edging toward the door. I will make you an offer, Gabriel went on, which is a great deal more mercy than you have shown, and which you will accept, because the alternative is ruin. You will sign tonight, before my own solicitor, who waits in the next room, a full renunciation of your guardianship and a full accounting of the Carew fortune, and you will make restitution of every penny you have taken. I have had the figure computed. It is precise. In return, I will not lay the whole of this filthy business before the magistrates, the newspapers, and every acquaintance you possess, which I am otherwise entirely prepared and indeed eager to do. You will go home. You will trouble Miss Carew no further, in this world or the next. And you will thank whatever God you pretend to worship that she had the wit to climb into my carriage and not another man's, for there is not another man in England who would have handed you so gentle a bill for so black a crime. He turned his pale eyes on Alderton. And you, sir, will remove yourself from my house within the minute, before I forget that I am a gentleman. There is no bride here, there never was. Go, they went. Kern signed everything, his hand shaking. There was nothing else he could do. And when at last the great door had closed on the ruin of Marcus Kern's ambitions and Rosalind Carew's whole fortune had been restored to her and made secure past any man's reach, Gabriel Thorne turned from the fireplace and found that she was standing in the doorway of the hall. That she had heard, perhaps, all of it or enough, and that she looking at him with an expression that undid, in a single instant, the entire careful architecture of his solitude. You did that, she said, unsteadily, coming toward him across the great cold hall. You did all of that. Quietly, while I thought you were only writing letters. You took my whole ruin and my whole future into your hands, and you set it right, and you never said a word to me because, her voice caught, because you did not want my gratitude. You never want anyone's gratitude. You would rather be thought cold than let anyone see that you are the kindest man I have ever known. I am not kind, said Gabriel. Lo, the old reflex, the old armor. Ask anyone, they will tell you. I have asked everyone, said Rosalind. The servants, your aunt, the village. They all say the Duke of Rookhaven is cold and hard and cares for nothing living. She stopped before him, closer than she had ever stood, her warm brown eyes swimming and steady all at once. And every one of them is wrong, and I know it, because I crawled into your carriage in the dark 22 years old and out of my wits with fear, and you covered me with a rug against the cold before you did one single other thing, before you even asked my name. A cold man does not do that, Gabriel Thorn. A cold man does not do any of what you have done. I do not know who taught you to hide it, but I have watched you for a fortnight, and I have seen the man under the ice, and her courage nearly failed her. He watched her take it back up in both hands. I have fallen in love with him. There it is said. You may send me away for it if you like. My fortune is safe now, thanks to you, and I need never trouble you again. But I could not go without telling you the truth, because you rescued me with the truth, and you deserve it in return. For a long moment Gabriel Thorn could not speak at all. 10 years of ice. 10 years of a grief he had never set down, a debt he had never believed he could pay, a self he had frozen so hard that he had come to believe there was nothing left inside it to thaw. And here stood a girl he had lifted out of a trap, telling him unafraid, her chin up, her whole undefended heart in her eyes, that she loved the man beneath the ice, the man he had been so sure was dead. Rosalind, he said. Her name came out of him rough, unpracticed, like a word in a language he had not spoken since he was young. I have to tell you something, and then you must decide whether you still mean what you have said. The person I could not save, 10 years ago, the trap I was too slow for, I loved her. And I have carried every day since the certainty that I was a man who arrived too late to save the thing he loved, and that I had no right ever to love anything again, having failed so badly the once. That is the ice. That is all the ice ever was. He drew a breath that shook. And then a girl in the very same trap crawled into my carriage in the dark, and this time I was not too slow. This time I did not fail. And somewhere in the doing of it, Rosalind, somewhere between the crossroads and this hour, I stopped paying an old debt to a woman I lost and started, God help me, loving a woman I had found. I did not mean to. I did not think I could. I was certain the thing was dead in me. He lifted his hand slowly, and with fingers that were not quite steady he brushed a fallen strand of dark hair back from her wet cheek, the first time he had touched her since he covered her with a rug in a cold carriage a lifetime ago. It is not dead. You have shown me it is not dead. I love you, Rosalind Carew, not from debt, not from pity, not to make amends to a ghost. I love you as a man loves the one person who has taught him he is still alive. And I am asking you, I who swore I would never ask anything of anyone again, to stay. Not as my ward or my guest or my rescued stranger, as my wife, as the mistress of this cold house, which has wanted warmth as long as I have. Stay and let me spend the rest of my life proving that the man you saw under the ice was real, and that he is yours, entirely and always yours. Rosalind Carew did not answer in words. She reached up, and she laid her hand along his hard jaw as though she had every right to it, which she now had, and she rose on her toes, and Gabriel Thorn, Duke of Rookhaven, who had told a shaking girl in the dark to be still, that he would protect her, drew his answer into his arms at last and held her against his thawing heart, and kissed her, slowly, in the great cold hall that was cold no longer, a man come after 10 frozen years, all the way back to life. They were married before the spring, and in the long, warm years that followed, when Rookhaven had filled with lightened voices and the sound of small, quick feet on the old stone stairs, and the servants had grown used to the astonishing sight of their master smiling, and Lady Sefton had taken all the credit and been allowed to keep it. Gabriel would sometimes wake in the black hours and reach across the dark and find his wife beside him, warm and breathing and safe, and he would think of a raw November dawn, and a crest on a carriage door, and a desperate voice from the well of the coach begging him not to turn back. Be still, he had told her. I will protect you. He had kept the promise every hour of every day since. And she had, without ever meaning to, kept a far greater one to him, had crawled into his carriage a hunted stranger and thawed, by a mere trusting presence. A heart that had frozen so long ago the man himself had forgotten it could feel, had rescued in being rescued, the very last thing at Rookhaven that anyone had thought past saving, which was the master of the house himself.